Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the Motivation Podcast. My name is Sanne.
And I am Elina.
And we are your hosts today. We are two students studying at the University College of Groningen, and we are both majoring in social sciences.
As we are students ourselves, we know how difficult it can be to stay motivated, especially during these very strange times.
And this is why we started the Motivation Podcast. In a series of episodes, we will talk about topics ranging from procrastination to perfectionism, with the aim to shed some light into the question of what motivates people. So, without further ado, let's start the show. I've been lacking motivation, can't stop with procrastinating. I need help, I need it fast. Listen to our podcast.
In today's episode, we'll talk about motivation, or rather, the lack thereof. And we will discuss why so many students seem to procrastinate. Are students just lazy? Or is there a deeper mechanism explaining why procrastination is so common? And this is why, here in the studio today, we have a very special guest, an empirical specialist on the topic, if you will. Joel.
Woo!
Thanks for welcoming me to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for being here as well. Maybe for everyone who is listening, could you shortly introduce yourself?
Right, so I'm a third-year liberal arts student who is doing a free major since my interest fell in many different disciplines, and I've mainly taken courses within philosophy, psychology and humanities. So my interests are very varied, and I'm 21 and I'm from Barcelona.
Okay, thank you. And you are in your last year of university college, and you have managed to get by despite being a master procrastinator.
Unfortunately, yes.
So, as an expert on the topic, how would you define procrastination? Like, what does it mean for you?
Put simply, it is the act of delaying work that needs to be done and replacing it with activities that are not urgent.
I mean, I guess I would agree. It's just, I feel like it's all about trying to avoid discomfort. So there's this thing we don't want to do, so we just put it off until we really can't put it off anymore.
Yeah, it does also create a lot more discomfort down the road, but at least in the short term, you push it back.
Yeah, exactly. So, procrastination is the act of postponing a certain action or decision. For example, if you need to write an essay, but you end up wasting time on the internet even though you know that you should be working, that means that you are procrastinating. And it's something that we all do to a certain extent, but high levels of procrastination are associated with higher levels of stress, anxiety, depression, lower self-esteem. And procrastination can also take on many forms. So, for instance, you can procrastinate on going to the doctor, writing your thesis, or cleaning your room. So, as a first question, what do you procrastinate on? Is it mainly academics or also in other areas of your life?
Virtually everything. So, all those examples hit pretty close to home. On thesis, cleaning my room, washing dishes, answering messages, literally anything that causes slight discomfort, whatever it may be, can be a reason for me to procrastinate, and often is. So, yeah, essentially anything.
That's very relatable. How about you, Elina? Do you procrastinate in the same way?
No, actually, I'm quite different. I do, of course, procrastinate, but I think I procrastinate more with, for example, I really hate making phone calls to, like, I don't know, institutions or some company I have to call about something. And I tend to put that off for weeks if I can. But with, like, academic stuff, I'm quite perfectionistic, so I like to start a bit early and, make sure I'll get it done. So, a bit different.
And then what do you guys do when you procrastinate? Does it feel the same as having free time, or is it not as relaxing? Because for me, it's always this voice in the back of my head saying, oh, you should actually be doing this and this and this and this and this. So I feel like you can never truly take the time off and actually recharge because you always end up feeling guilty.
It depends on how close the deadline is. If the deadline is 2 weeks or further away, It's essentially the same as free time. My brain can just pretend like there is nothing going on in deep down I know there's something I should be doing, but there's so much time that I know that I can do it anyway. So mostly free time, and then when the deadline comes nears, it doesn't feel like free time because even though I may be enjoying myself, I have these feelings and this anxiety and stress creeps up. So it's not as enjoyable, even though it still appears to be more enjoyable than actually engaging and doing the work.
So, would you say that procrastination is an inherently bad thing, or do you think we should strive to procrastinate as little as possible?
I mean, it's bad for you. It's like because you're only making yourself have to work harder and be more stressed in the end. So I feel like it's not bad in the sense that it's inherently bad. It's just more, harmful for yourself maybe.
I don't think anyone can really completely avoid it, and if they do, they have tremendous willpower, which is something really admirable. But
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, if at least for me, I know my limitations, and I know that I'll never be the person that can completely abstain from procrastinating.
No, I agree. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, and I don't think the goal should be to not procrastinate at all.
No, I feel like having the ability to not procrastinate would be like a superpower.
And I mean, there also must be some advantages. Why would you otherwise keep doing it, right?
So one of the advantages, right, of starting your work after everyone else is that you can use their insight to be more efficient. Like procrastinating and putting limits on how much time you have to do something at times does uh, let you sort of leech on everyone else's experience and do things faster.
Hmm. So, in the end, do you feel like you have saved time? Do you think you were more efficient, or would you say that there's some sort of price that you pay?
I do feel that it forces me to be more efficient. There is no way I would complete those same assignments in that same amount of time if I didn't have that immense pressure. There's absolutely no way I would have finished certain essays without that intense pressure of finishing it on the last day. Yeah. If I've really left something for last minute, if it's really an essay that I'm finishing on the hour before the deadline, the quality kind of is the least of your concerns. It becomes a struggle to survive. You activate this mode where you just need to get things done with. You just need to finish it, and your goal is to present something. The quality of it is not something that you can really worry too much about because you're too concerned with uh, correctly like referencing everything and having something that will qualify as a pass. Like your priority in times of like intense pressure is to pass. Like it's true that I've been surprised at times that I've had to rush and present something. Sometimes you get a mediocre result. Thankfully, you can just justify that by saying you didn't give yourself enough time. And other times you get a very good result for the amount of time you put in, and then it feels like it was worth the stress you had to go through. When that thing works out for you, it really does not help you try to change your habits.
I'm just wondering, don't you ever feel guilty, or like even if you get like an 8.5 but you didn't really give it everything you could, um do you feel like that's being efficient, or do you feel like that is kind of getting away with it?
It's a bit of both. If your question is if I feel guilty, not really, because I'm not the one who determines my grade. I mean, if I had received a 7 for that same assignment, I would have been like, that's fair. I guess I'm not that concerned with the exact grade. I do feel sometimes I do feel guilty that I didn't work hard on something, but at the end of the day, a lot of these small assignments don't really determine my worth or what I think of myself.
I think it's really interesting what you're saying, and it really reminds me of this study where students were brought into a lab and they were told that at the end of the session they would engage in a math puzzle. And then some of them were told that it was a meaningful test of their cognitive abilities, while the others were told that it's only designed to be meaningless and fun. And then before doing the puzzle, the students had this like in between period during which they could prepare for the task or just mess around. And the chronic procrastinators only delayed practice on the puzzle when it was described as a cognitive evaluation. Well, when it was described as fun, they had no different behavior from non procrastinators. And basically, the researchers concluded that procrastination really is a self defeating behavior. So, chronic procrastinators would rather have other people think that they lack the effort instead of thinking that they lack the ability. And it's also like a good way of rationalizing your own behavior, right? Oh, I didn't put in the effort, so that is why I didn't get a high grade. But if you actually put in the effort, then you risk being judged on your abilities.
I completely identify with this. If I put all my effort into something and I didn't get an excellent grade, then I would be sorely disappointed. If I really put all my efforts into something and I didn't do well, then yeah, that would probably hurt way more than if I do if I have a mediocre grade in something but I didn't put any or much effort into something. Now that you say it, I don't think I've ever presented something that represented 100% of my effort. I don't think I've ever produced something that really shows what I'm worth, I guess you could say. There have been times where I've given it, like, let's say 60, 70%, and that's like, and I'm like, oh, I can be proud of this, I actually, I think we all know when we actually try to do something, when we've made a good effort, we're like, damn, that was a good try. That is not what I feel 90% of the time. It really isn't.
I guess it makes a lot of sense to me. Like, personally, I am quite different, but I do, because I put so much effort in things, I really relate to what you said about it hurting when the result isn't great. So, like, when I get like a 6 on something, I tend to get quite mad, and maybe because I attach too much worth to it. Like, and what I hear from you is kind of sort of avoiding that, like protecting yourself, but also in a way that kind of works by saying that I don't value, like, my self-worth doesn't depend on these assignments, right? Well, if you put your everything or like 80% into anything you do, every time is like a moment of judgment of how smart are you, how
Exactly.
good are you, how hardworking are you. So I think it's very interesting to hear from me as well. Like, I still don't think that procrastination necessarily is better or anything, but it does show a bit of a more of a psychologically healthy way of relating to grades, like, and to yourself.
I mean, I'm completely aware that it is a defense mechanism, a self-protective mechanism, but I don't see the point in always giving 100%. Like, yes, this goes completely against what my mother taught me. Like, she was a straight A student, and she would like put in the hours and like work really hard. And then when she saw me just idly, reading or watching TV and just chilling, living my, just not focusing on my work even during exam weeks. She was just like, how can you live with yourself? And I'm like, I don't know, man. I guess if I did give it 100% and I didn't succeed, it would hurt me even more.
And what about, because for me personally, if I would do what you do, like, I have great respect for it, because for me it's hard to understand, because I would feel so anxious, because I'm like, I have to do it, I have to start, I have to do something, it's not going to be all right, it's not going to be all right. Like, that's like how I would feel. So I don't know, like, what, like, so do you ever experience something like that, like any
Yeah,
anxiety or
like right now with my thesis, quite a lot.
yeah.
But we're a week away from the draft deadline, and it's still not strong enough to force me to work on it all day. Like, am I working on it? Yes, but am I working on it enough? No. I guess that I predict that 2 or 3 days from now, it's gonna turn into like a full day struggle, because that's when the anxiety and stress will reach levels that are so high that even I can't just procrastinate. Yeah, I haven't like there's a breaking point. There's a point where you have to set aside the procrastination and go into intense effort and work mode. Like I go from having no work ethic to a very rigid and strict one, but it doesn't. It only lasts for very short spurts of time. That's I have very intense efforts. Like in all my work, 90% of done is done in these very short periods of time. So there are times that are very stressful and where I have to use a lot of, like, let's say, brain energy and willpower. But I've always, or practically always, managed to pull through. So that is kind of the way. That's the only way I know how to complete tasks.
So, have you never tried to plan out your life, or
Yeah, well, my life. That's my whole life. That's daunting.
I mean your whole life? That's a lot, but how about planning for an exam week?
I've tried. There were a couple times where I maybe managed to plan out a week or two, and I had it only worked because I was like held accountable by a friend. Like doing these like constant study groups or having a study buddy, that kind of thing made me stick to it a bit longer. I think my record is like 3 weeks of like disciplined work where I followed a schedule, but I've never maintained it for more than 3 weeks. I'm incapable.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. It's not my style. Like it while it lasts, it's very nice because I feel like I'm keeping track of everything and then after a few days, I just relax. I'm like, I'm so far ahead. I can take a break. And once I realize that I'm no longer ahead, that I've lost control, that I'm not on track, that's when I lose motivation again quickly. I'm like, oh, I fucked it up again. I messed up my schedule. And then when I feel that way, it's accompanied by, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks of extreme procrastination. Because I failed, I failed. What's the point of like trying to stay on track? I feel like if I break my schedule a single day, that's enough to set me off track for the next 2 weeks. I'm not sure how exactly that psychological mechanism works, but once you've failed, it's hard to continue as if you hadn't like relapsed, into your procrastinating ways.
Yeah, it sounds like very familiar to a lot of psychological, like, if you have a habit, or like imagine going on a diet, right? And then you've been doing it for 2 weeks, you're feeling great, but then at some point you decide to eat that piece of chocolate, and then you feel so guilty, or you're like, I failed, so it doesn't matter anymore, so I'll just go back.
Yeah, it's very much it functions like an addiction in my case. I'm dependent on procrastination. Like, does it feel good to get off the drug? Yes, but I relapse.
Yeah, it's difficult, and I think it's really interesting to ask ourselves, why do we relapse? Why do we keep on procrastinating? What's behind that? There's this one theory that aims to explain why we procrastinate, which is called the temporal motivation theory by Dr. Steele. And he explains procrastination in terms of a motivation formula. The higher the motivation, the less likely someone is to procrastinate. And the elements of this equation include expectancy, so the belief that you can complete a task, value, how valuable is the reward that you get from the task, impulsiveness, how easily do you get distracted by something that is more fun, and delay, so how long do you have to wait to get the reward. And your motivation basically boils down to the expectancy times the value divided by the impulsiveness times the delay. And if you then want to stop procrastinating, you have to figure out how to manipulate one or more of the equation's elements. Or you have to rely on sheer willpower and self-control. So, of course, this theory is an oversimplification of the underlying causes, but I think it does a nice job at defining some of the key elements of procrastination. So, if you look at your own reasons for procrastination, do you think they can be captured in this formula, or do you think there's something else that causes you to procrastinate?
Now that you were mentioning the formula, I think what strikes me as especially important is how my motivation, for the most part, is very low, especially this past year. My willpower is when I get going is not that bad, but I need to get started on something. Mainly, the problem with procrastination is delaying the starting something, right? Once you're already underway, it's easier to continue that next day. It's when you have nothing that it's really hard. But I've noticed in my own procrastination, since I don't have a clear vision or a plan of what I want to do in my future, there isn't a clear reward. There isn't a. I don't have a clear end goal, so it's sometimes hard to see what I'm working for, why I'm struggling. Yeah, I want to get a degree, but I still don't know what I'm gonna do with it. So it's very hard to draw motivation from something which is so uncertain. Also, I think I suffer from a pretty high impulsivity. I'm easily distracted.
How do you deal with that?
I've had success with using the Pomodoro technique. If I don't set a timer and like completely disconnect my phone and other things from like my Discord and these things, it's really hard to not be distracted. Like over the past few months, I started playing a lot of video games, and that's been a source of distraction. Like when you have your friends waiting to play online with you, at the touch of a button, you can just talk to them and play. You get that instant gratification. Like if an assignment is not going well or you're just tired, it's so easy to give in to hanging out with your friends and just playing a game. It really helps you escape from the cycle of stress and just. So yeah, I've resorted to that a lot when I'm stressed or just unmotivated. I just hang out with them because it numbs the pain of feeling like you're not making any progress or you're stuck.
Well, with that being said, I think it would be nice to go towards some maybe techniques that people can try to reduce procrastination a bit. And one of the most fantastic things that Sanne found in our research is that taking a cold shower may help you.
Well, this is oversimplifying it, but the idea is that self discipline, which is the willingness to accept discomfort, can be trained by denying yourself short term gratification. And you can build better self discipline through repeated exposure. Like Aristotle says, we are what we repeatedly do. So, the more you train your self discipline, whatever form that may be in, easier it will be to also incorporate this in academic settings. And since you already have to shower every day, there's really no way to rationalize yourself out of taking this cold shower. Like you have no excuse. So by training your self-discipline with the cold showers, you will also increase your self-discipline and it will start to seep through in other areas of your life as well. So, Joelle, how do you feel about taking cold showers?
I tried that once and perhaps it was kind of working, but then I couldn't stick to it either. It's a trend quitting these like habits. I know I feel like I'm a pretty impulsive person and I give in quite easily. You know.
I don't think you should be too hard on yourself because everyone is like this. This is the human condition.
My sister's a really good example of someone with insane willpower. I guess I'm kind of defined myself as the opposite of her. You know, growing up, she was like the motivated one, the hard worker. So I always define myself in opposition to that. I was like, I am not that. I am not the person with the insane willpower.
So, do you see that as a fixed part of your identity then?
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
That's a dangerous mindset.
Yeah, do you think that you are not able to change being a procrastinator? Is that something that is really part of your identity?
It's true that I agree that it may be problematic that in my identity I have this whole being a procrastinator thing. I've always figured that if I find my true calling in life, I'll be able to get rid of it. You know, up until now I feel like I haven't found exactly the right thing for me. You know what I really want to dedicate my life to, and this is like it's not a permanent trait, you know, or at least I hope it isn't. I feel like if I find the right thing for me, I'll be able to get rid of it. That's what I tell myself, but maybe that's just another defense mechanism.
Of course, the academic environment is not something everyone struggles because you always have to do things that you don't want to. But I think in life, now I'm going all philosophical now. But in life, if you find a job that you enjoy, there will be days where you don't. There will be moments where you don't, or maybe even periods, you know. And I just, yeah, you always take yourself with you, you know, and your experiences and your habits. So I just,
Yeah.
even though it might help, I hope it does, of course, if you're passionate about something. I do have to say, like, this year I finally started doing courses that I did enjoy more, which really helped me. But still, I don't know. I do think it's still a part of life, you know, that discomfort, it's always going to be there. And these, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. For instance, if your passion is music, not every part of music is as
Yeah.
fun. Music theory, for example, that's just something that you have to get through, and you needed to get to the good parts.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I definitely. Yeah. That
Yeah.
reminds me of my music classes as a child and me hating music theory, especially. I was just like, ah. And now looking back, I was like, damn it! I wish I had paid more attention. God damn it. Oh. Yeah, and even now in my music, and like I enjoy it, but I mostly go back to the comfortable things, the things that don't require challenging myself.
Yeah, and with music, there's not much of a consequence if you stay in the comfort zone. But with academics, you're really like pushed out there, and it can be so difficult if a task is overwhelming to get over that initial hill and start working.
I don't know if this makes sense to you, but what if not getting over that hill early on makes that hill tower over and over you to the point where it feels like you're trying to climb the Everest, you know? That's often what happens. Like at first it's daunting, but the less time you give yourself, the more daunting it seems and the more dread you feel.
I think in particular it's interesting, like a psychological, kind of like an ironic effect, is that when we try to suppress something or avoid something, it tends to get bigger. So that hill that you describe, right? The more you avoid it, the more you try not to think about it, the more it will actually grow, and the harder it will get. And this is something that is like behind so many of our problems. And I do think, yeah, that this is something you need to realize in order to even be able to try and change your behavior. Yeah.
Yeah, but then the interesting thing is that hill is getting bigger and bigger, but simultaneously your time is getting shorter and shorter. So at a certain point, you do decide to tackle that hill. So I don't know what makes us then suddenly feel like we're able to do it.
There's like this critical point where you have this make or break it, kind of scenario
Survival
where
mode.
you activate survival
Yeah.
mode. You're like, am I gonna let this mountain end me, or am I gonna climb it? Will it be the death of me or not? And with a lot of these subjects, it kind of feels like, oh, this is it. This is it. If I don't do this now, I'm gonna fail. I don't want to fail. And I've noticed that when I go through like these intense like moments of pressure and just like working, I don't eat. I don't really try think of napping or of breaks. I just power through. If I have to sit at my desk for 8 hours without like talking to anyone or doing anything else, I just do it.
But I was just, while you were talking, I'm thinking about this instant gratification, right? This immediate reward, which is something all humans prefer over, long term, getting something later. So I'm just thinking to myself right now, if this deadline is coming closer, and the deadline means like handing in means I passed the course, maybe it's kind of like that. By having just a small time frame, the reward is going to be much faster, because failing the course in the beginning of a course that is 8 weeks, like having to do something for that, like it's far away. But then when it comes so close, something psychologically changes as well, because you will fail or you will pass.
Yeah.
You have to do it now.
I mean, the reward, it's you're right about the reward being right there. You're just like, I have, let's say, I have 10 hours left. It's if I slack off today, I will fail. If I work really hard, I'm gonna pass. In those scenarios, like, who would really choose the fail over the trying to get the pass? Like, I know that if it's like 1 hour, if I've had very few times where I've or outright given up on doing an assignment. I always will attempt it towards the end. I don't know. I can't. I'm unable to just slack off and not do it. I will present something even if the quality is questionable.
Isn't this what Sana said at some point? This quote where like you rather think that you lack that others think you lack effort than ability, right? You want to show you can still produce something, but that you just didn't put
Yeah.
in enough time.
Yeah. Motivation wise, it's definitely my motivation is at an all time low.
Would you say that's because of the pandemic? How has it impacted you?
I think the most significant way in which it has impacted is like the fact that I've been at home with my parents and not in a study environment where I've experienced other people's pressure. As I've like mentioned before, I function a lot based on external pressures, and me chilling at home with my parents and not being in contact with a lot of students just made me super relaxed. Also, at the beginning of the pandemic, like the workload was considerably lower than it is now. I had probably the best grades of my life with the least effort. So it was kind of a dream scenario. I know it was what was going on outside was horrible, but as the couch potato that I am, I actually enjoyed the first few weeks. I was like, this isn't half bad. Studying from home, just doing some readings here and there, writing some small essays. Then the workload got a bit more intense, and during the first block I was working as well as doing all these courses, and then it got a bit stressful. But still, since I wasn't in that study environment, the pressures were just deadlines, not other people telling me, "Hey, have you started doing this? Have you started doing that?" Those things. I cannot tell you how many times other people worrying about an assignment or telling me how long something takes has made me, eager to get started on it. Going to UCG nearly every day forced me to maintain a fairly healthy sleeping schedule. I couldn't get away with what I'm doing now. Like I play video games with my friends until like 1 a.m. every day. Maybe not going to bed until 2 or 3. And then I wake up around 10:30, 11. And then I don't know if you feel this way, but if you wake up at 11, you already feel like, oh, I've already wasted my morning, so I'm just going to chill and maybe get started. I'll start working at 4, these kind of things.
And then your whole schedule shifts.
Yeah. If you even had one in the first place, which it isn't always the case, or rarely the case in my case. But being home all the time makes it so easy to give in to procrastination. Like every day I went to UCG was a day that was somewhat productive. When I'm at home, that is definitely not the case. There are many days that are completely unproductive. And
So would you say that your productivity is tied to the space that you are in?
yeah, a change of scenery might really help me. I mean, I know it's studied that it's been reported that helps. Having a proper schedule, both sleeping and a different space where procrastination is not as acceptable or not as prone to happen. Those two things are perhaps the most defining of this year.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's hope that UCG opens soon and that we can leave this whole pandemic behind. But since that might take a while, we'll have to figure out some sort of system for ourselves to stay motivated and to end the year on a good note. So, with that being said, with the podcast coming to an end, do you have a final golden tip for our listeners?
Yeah, don't try this at home. Yeah. I don't know. I'd say if you haven't been tempted by the ways of procrastination, don't start now. And if you've noticed things that work for you, like for example, when something has worked for me, so for example using the Pomodoro technique, I've stuck to it, and without using something like that, there are many deadlines that I wouldn't have managed to deal with. So I'd say find what works for you and stick to it. You can experiment, of course, try new things, but if you find a winning formula, please stick to it.
Thank you so much for coming today.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
really enjoyed our conversation. We learned a lot about you and about ourselves.
It was very productive. Actually, very productive. I think it might help me with this upcoming week. It gave me some ideas.
Nice.
Yeah,
A boost.
I think I needed this.
Going for the cold showers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at this point. I need as much help as I can get. So yeah, thank you.